Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
Good morning, Kentuckyana. This is your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson of the Kentucky Liberty Caucus. That's kylibertycaucus.com. We have a very special segment here today. We're going to be bringing on a candidate for a special election. If we can get our audio issues sorted out, we hope we can bring him on. His name is Calvin Leach. He's going to be running for the State Senate District 37, which is in southwest Louisville. We'll go through all the details of that in our first segment if we can get that worked out. I also have on Jim Waters, and we're going to talk through a lot of legislation that the Kentucky Liberty Caucus is going to be promoting this upcoming session. We thought this was particularly important to talk about because in the middle of November, sometimes it goes into early December, we have our caucus retreats, which is the Republican and Democrat parties in each chamber of our state legislature will meet and talk about their priorities for the upcoming session. This is a budget session, so we will have a little bit of discussion about those budget issues, but I think we've got, somewhere around 38 or 39 possible pieces of legislation that we are going to be advocating for, not all of those equally important. So we'll try to hit on some of those high points later on. Remember, your state legislature is probably more important and has a bigger impact on your day-to-day life than the federal government. Sure, the federal government has the income tax, which is probably your biggest tax bill. We don't want to minimize that. But on your day-to-day life, what can your school board pass? Is the taxing authority for your fiscal court, your school board, your fire department, your soil and conservation district? All of those different things are controlled by the state legislature rather than the federal. And so it has a big impact, and we want to talk through a lot of those issues. If we get to it, we want to discuss things like the upcoming federal tax credit that might be allocated to private school or homeschool students through the federal government that would basically get around the Kentucky Supreme Court prohibition on funding of those types of schools. We'll like to talk about a little bit about K through 12 education and whether we are able to get DEI or CRT out of our K through 12 schools, much like we did for higher education last session. We want to talk through some other issues like maybe changing the age at which we have concealed carry so that young women are able to protect themselves. So there's a lot of legislation that has floated up over the past few sessions that hasn't gotten over the finish line. We want to talk through some of those really great ideas, in my opinion, that just haven't got that final floor vote in order to get over the finish line. Remember, ultimately, it's the Republicans and the supermajority of both the Senate and the House that control what legislation gets passed in this state. The governor, even if he wants to oppose something, his veto can be overridden by a simple majority. So if the bill passed the first time and they do it in a timely manner, they can always force through any sort of legislation regardless of what Governor Beshear thinks about it.
That's been the salvation factor for many of these policies.
Very much.
This legislature has overridden him over 100, I don't know, it's 150 times or some number. I don't have the exact number, but it's been healthy for our state because it's the legislature stepping up and truly representing the people, and that's what they're elected to do. And they have the power of the purse, right? So constitutionally, so they can do a lot of things, and they have done them.
That's
So,
right.
Good for them. Yeah.
That's right. So stick with us through these the upcoming break. Our first segment, we're going to talk about this special election. Most people don't know, but there is going to be an election in Louisville on December 16th of this year. So we'll talk through the Republican candidate for that race, some of his priorities, and hopefully we'll have Calvin Leach, is his name, on in our first segment. So make sure you come back after the break. Thanks for joining us on Kentucky's Voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson of the Kentucky Liberty Caucus. You can find that online at kylibertycaucus.com. We want to talk through some of your other options. If you are on Facebook, find Kentucky's Voice and you can see a live stream of this broadcast. YouTube also has a live stream, and then edits to the video will be available on YouTube on that Kentucky's Voice channel as well. Mm-hmm. We also usually have a rebroadcast at 4 p.m. on channel 21 on Spectrum,
and
WBNA.
Now.
And at
12:30 and 4 o'clock down on WBNA channel 21 in Louisville. Here.
Okay,
so
excellent.
If you get that, and you can watch them across the social media platforms. And also, if I may, we want you to support this program. You know, this is a listener-supported operation, so
that's right.
You can really text. You can text. Dan, what is that? I want to make sure I have that number right. You can text. Give to kyvoice. You can give at kyvoice.org.
That number is 502-571-0970.
That number is to text us with your comments, and you can give at kyvoice.org, and make this part of your. A lot of folks are saying, "Hey, we want a conservative media outlet. We need that here in Kentucky to push back on the legacy media, on the corporate progressive media. This is your voice, Kentucky's voice. This is your voice, and so invest in this. It's a good investment."
That's right. And as we know, we need more conservative voices in the Louisville area in particular.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah. And it's making a difference. You know, we see movement here on the Metro Council. We see parts of our city that are becoming redder and more conservative and more common sense. You know, hey, common sense policies about crime, about spending, about budgets, about how taxpayer dollars get spent. So
that's right.
So this is an opportunity to keep that up.
That's
so,
right.
Yep.
Okay, we're still trying to sort out some audio issues with our candidate, Calvin Leach, so we may bump that to a little bit later in the show to see if we can get him on directly. Whether we can or not, we will talk over the specifics of that election. It's a very important election for the Kentucky Senate. As many people know, David Yates has moved on to become, he was appointed by the mayor to become the county clerk to replace Bobby Holsclaw after her untimely death.
Yeah, and by the way, I meant to mention this earlier, but on an earlier show, but we certainly our prayers and thoughts and concerns are with her family. We Clerk Holsclaw was in this studio in the last election she ran in, and we interviewed her sitting right here in this studio, and she was on top of her game and well respected. So we certainly sympathize and send our sympathies. It's belated, but we want to make sure to do that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Condolences to her family.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off talking about some legislation that we think would be very important to be pushed by our state legislature. So the first of those we want to talk about is issues related to school choice. Now, just as a reminder, we did have school choice on the ballot for a constitutional amendment, Amendment number 2, and at the end of 2024. Unfortunately, that did not pass. That isn't the end of school choice in Kentucky, however. And so there are various ways that we can give parents more control over the education of their children, including parents that have their children in public school. And so the first of those topics that I want to talk about is something called a Tebow bill. So as most people know, Tim Tebow was a national championship and Heisman Award winning college quarterback. What a lot of people don't know is that both of his parents were missionaries, and he was actually homeschooled all through his youth. And the problem came up, what do we do with a person that is among the best handful of football players in the entire country that's homeschooled? And I don't know if you've ever played backyard football, but backyard football doesn't prepare a person for the SEC.
It can be dangerous too.
That's right. You don't want to tackle grandma and hurt anyone
unless it's tag football.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and what did he? So as a homeschooler, how did he end up being able to get a college scholarship?
So the Florida legislature, knowing this and being big fans, I'm sure, of Gator football, decided to put in a provision such that if Tim Tebow would attend at least one class at a local high school, he could then participate in the extracurricular activities, in particular football. And so I believe somewhere on the order of 30 states now have some version of this.
Yeah.
Some of the limits to that I don't think are reasonable. Why do we need to have him attend one particular class?
Well, this is being discussed. I had a conversation with Representative Timmy Truitt, who's actually has been an opponent of some of our school choice bill, but he's very open to doing some things that might bridge some of those gaps. But that's the approach that they're thinking of, some kind of a hybrid where students would take at least a class, and then I guess they feel like politically that might be easier to deal with.
Politically, we have 80% of both chambers of the legislature. Yeah. We don't need to accommodate this, and this is the primary justification for me. All of the homeschool parents and all of the parents who send their children to private school pay the same tax money that parents who send their children to public school. Well, they literally are paying for all of these facilities, all of these teachers, etc.
I'm a homeschooling parent too. We homeschooled three daughters. The youngest did a hybrid program. It worked for her. Yeah. It's got to be what works. I guess the question is, if there isn't that recommendation, how would that work? If let's say we had a Tim Tebow that was homeschooled, would he just join up with with a team where he's living at the district? I guess that's how that would work. So
it would be, you would only be able to participate in extracurriculars for whichever district you would be assigned if you were going to public schools.
Yeah, okay.
So it isn't a matter of I can take my kid and take him over.
There's not going to be like poaching from one district to the other.
Exactly.
Or recruiting. We'll put it that way.
It's wherever you would wind up if you were going to public schools. That's what school you would be participating in.
Look, homeschooling parents pay their property taxes. They pay the school taxes. They fund these facilities. These facilities are funded by taxpayers. And they need to figure out. I think this can happen. Like you said, we know from all these other states that it can be done.
Yeah, and it can even be done in Kentucky.
It can be,
a version of a Tebow bill actually passed the Kentucky House in 2027, sponsored by a guy named Stan Lee, who was in southern Fayette County, Lexington. So this has already passed through. Representative Ryan Dotson, who's now running for U.S. Congress in District 6, he has sponsored this bill multiple times. And then last session, Stephen Doan actually forced a vote on the floor over an amendment to another bill that would add a version of a Tebow bill. The version of a Tebow bill that I'm in favor of, however, isn't limited to just sports. And that's where a lot of the focus always comes into it when we're talking about these things. There are many extracurriculars that are being financed by these homeschool and private school parents that their children should have access to. And those include things like plays, if they're putting on a drama plays, debate clubs, chess clubs, really any of these extracurriculars that are happening. And I guarantee that a lot of these activities at the public schools, they could use some more people to participate in all of these extracurriculars.
I would think they would. Many of them would welcome it. Now, you got the bureaucrats, the superintendents, who have been our biggest opponents on reform and change and choice.
That's right.
And they need to get with the program. It's time for them to catch up with how taxpayers and citizens look at this.
100%.
I don't think most public school families would have a problem with this either. I think they would welcome
exactly.
it. Yeah,
Exactly.
I agree. Yeah. Yep.
Exactly. And more participation in these extracurriculars is only going to strengthen it for the other people. Now, there are some liability issues that need to be sorted out. What happens if the private school child comes to public school and gets hurt? So those are things that we can sort out, having private insurance or even just signing a waiver of liability. The public school is not held responsible for anything like that.
It's done in different sectors all the time. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, as our school in most states, as our other options, educational options,
100%.
we don't have here.
Another topic that I want to talk about on this general idea is the possibility, and we won't dig too deep into this, the possibility of reform in JCPS. As we just learned a month or two ago, the JCPS, Jefferson County Public Schools, is running a $188 million in the red budget. Something needs to change. Half of the worst performing schools in the state are in Jefferson County. So one proposal, and a proposal that I'm in favor of, is the possibility of splitting that gigantic district, one of the biggest districts in the entire United States, into multiple districts that can be managed at a slightly smaller level and more attention can be paid to kids.
Yep. I think offering parents options, again, it gets back to choices. I think that's maybe going to also be something to look at, because creating 4 separate bureaucracies without change, without choice, without reform, I think you have to have some of that in there too. But, there's a lot of ideas being discussed.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Okay, we'll pick up on these topics as we come back from the break. Come on back. Kentucky's Voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
One, back to you.
Welcome back. I'm your special host, Dr. Lance Pearson with the Kentucky Liberty Caucus. I'm joined by Jim Waters as we're talking through some of the possible legislation that we'd like to see passed in the 2026 state legislative session. The legislators are getting ready to go into the caucus retreats where they decide on what their legislative priorities are going to be. They usually do that in mid-November. Sometimes they do it in early December. But we wanted to make sure that we had people talking about issues that we think are very important ahead of those discussions. If we can get him on, and even if we don't get him on, we'll talk through some of the special election that's coming up in mid-December for part of Jefferson County later in the show. So we just touched on this as we were going into break, the possibility of breaking up JCPS. I want to remind our listeners and our viewers that there was a task force formed to talk over some of this possibility that occurred last summer. Ultimately, that task force / committee didn't offer any recommendations that I saw. So I want to make sure that in the next summer we revive this possibility just to basically have some difference, some choice, some possibilities for different areas of Jefferson County to select which school board they think should be operating and which superintendents might be managing various parts of the county and JCPS.
Yeah. You know, when this discussion first began, I thought splitting the district up would be helpful. You know, would be, because it is a big district, like you said, and I don't know that a 4-star general could come in and be the
That's right.
run this way. I think they'd eat them up and spit them out, chew them up and spit them out. Right?
There's over 80,000 children in JCPS.
There's 90. Well,
90,
there's 90,000 and plus, and it's one of the top. Certainly, it's one of the top largest school districts in America. In fact, when NAEP looks at test scores, they only look at the largest districts, and Jefferson County is the largest district. The issue is it doesn't benefit the students, and it doesn't change anything, and it could be even more costly if we do break up the district and it's not done in a way that actually brings change in results and reform. Right. You know, so just breaking up the district, it is big, but just breaking that up doesn't necessarily, I think, fix all the problems associated with just the size of it. Does that make sense?
Oh, no question. Yeah. I don't think that the act of breaking it up itself is going to magically make everything better.
If we simply duplicate services, we simply hire more administrators.
That's right.
We don't give as many options as there are now. That's certainly not going in the right direction. So
that's right.
Maybe this needs to be a discussion about creating different districts, but also choices for parents, giving them a passport.
No question. And that's why we're at the task force stage. Yeah. I do want a task force, but I want to report out. What are we meeting for if we're not going to be generating some recommendations and reports?
I think it's so hot. I think it was so hot that there were legislators who just didn't want to go there.
Yeah, well, that's why you're elected. You got to take the heat. Yeah, go ahead and make some recommendations, and then we'll modify them.
Look, and the other thing is they've talked about different experiments, and yet some of these folks will do anything except the experiment we know which has worked, which is the more options that parents in Florida have, the better their public schools are doing, and the more accountable they are. So why are we not going with what we know works here?
That's right. So. And I do want to have another reminder. I don't believe the case has been settled yet, but the Kentucky Supreme Court is currently hearing.
They had the arguments.
They've had the arguments already. So we're waiting on a decision on whether or not charter schools can or would be allowed in the state of Kentucky.
If I can, Chad Meredith, did we mention that? I don't think we mentioned.
We haven't yet.
Okay, let's. So Chad Meredith, who was the former Solicitor General of Kentucky, was advisor to former Governor Matt Bevin, his counsel. His nomination has been approved by the United States Senate. He is now a federal judge in Kentucky. They have voted on and approved his nomination by I think it was 48 to 45. But
That's right.
so congratulations to him. But the reason that comes up now is he wrote an amicus brief on why charter schools are constitutional
That's right.
for that case,
That's
and
right.
that the Supreme Court heard last month down in Danville.
That's
So,
right.
Yeah.
And
So congratulations to him.
Yeah, congratulations to him. That's the son of Steve Meredith, another
Right.
one of our Kentucky state senators.
That's right. That's right.
And remember, federal law trumps state law, even the state constitution. So if
Right.
if a matter like that were to come up and there was a disagreement between the Kentucky Supreme Court and federal judges, and especially the federal Supreme Court, they would trump that decision.
Well, his nomination, he was on track to be approved back during the Biden administration. Senator McConnell, majority leader at that time, and the Biden administration had worked out a deal where if they would approve his nomination, they would also fast track some other nominees that the Biden administration wanted. However, in the way it works is both U.S. senators from a state must approve of a nomination and be involved in that. Senator Rand Paul opposed it because he said he was not involved in the discussion.
That's right. So it was a matter of being boxed out of the decision.
Yeah.
Now, Rand Paul supported him this time around.
Right.
It wasn't anything towards
It wasn't
Chad
about
Meredith
his
in person.
right?
Yeah,
but still, it did keep him from. It did delay his nomination for
That's
a while,
right.
So.
Okay, the next topic on school choice and the possibility of some legislation. In the one big beautiful bill that passed the U.S. Congress and was signed into law by President Trump, there was a provision, and Jim can weigh in on this a little bit, for tax credits where an individual or even corporations, I believe, are able to give money towards organizations that would screen the possible organizations or schools. And remember, even home schools in the state of Kentucky are regulated as private schools. So you do need to maintain some basic paperwork. You are officially considered a school, even if it's just in your house with your own kids.
That's right.
And so
That's right.
The big beautiful bill would grant up to $1,700 for donations to private organizations that can reallocate that money to private schools, including homeschool expenses.
Well, actually,
Go ahead.
the $1,700 would be the cap that you could give as an individual or business, and it's actually given to a nonprofit, which these scholarship granting organizations would be nonprofits. They would then be responsible for distributing those funds in the form of scholarships to students who qualify, and there will be some qualification requirements in terms of income, but most families in Kentucky will be eligible for a scholarship. So, what has not been talked about as much in this bill, and they're still working on the regs for this and how this would be done, but this bill mirrors House Bill 563 that passed in Kentucky in 2021.
That's right.
That bill that bill allowed students in the largest counties to use scholarship dollars to go to a non-public school, but it also allowed public school students to have access to funds for educational expenses beyond what they were getting. So if they needed tutoring, or they needed supplies, or they needed services like a disabled child need therapy or needed services, those dollars could also be used for that. And that's the same thing that's going to be in this federal tax credit scholarship program. It will also make some funds available to public school students as well. This should be something everybody could get behind.
I think so. And so the difference here is it state tax credit money, which the Kentucky Supreme Court has struck down,
that's right,
or is it federal? And so in this case, it's the federal government giving you tax refunds for donations to those organizations.
People who give to this or businesses would get to apply that contribution against their federal tax liability.
That's right.
And so it works just like 563 worked here, that was struck down by our state Supreme Court. What's great about this is the teachers unions of Kentucky, the bureaucrats of Kentucky, the Kentucky Association of whatever, school administrators or whatever else will not be able to stop this. The legislature does need to opt in and make sure we opt in as a state.
And so what we really need the state legislature to do is put in an infrastructure like these account granting organizations that were put in HB 582, as well as HB 9 in 2022.
Well, they need to designate the state treasurer or somebody to handle this, and then the SGOs would be created by the
That's right.
really by the private sector. Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay, come on back. We're going to talk about some more legislation that should be priorities for next session.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice on 970 AM. You can find us on Facebook or YouTube, searching for the Kentucky's Voice channel. That's both live streamed, and then we'll put up videos or clips later on. You can find us at 12:30 or at 4 p.m. on channel 21 if you have Spectrum. And we've been talking over a lot of education legislation. I want to start off our segment with that as well. And we'll move on to some other legislative issues. So the next topic in legislation that I want to talk about is the elimination of DEI, CRT, all of these woke programs that have infiltrated our K through 12 education. So last session in HB4, we managed to, with arguable success, some of the universities have managed to sidestep some of those legislative restrictions, but we managed to eliminate a lot of the influence of DEI and racially discriminatory hiring and educational policies at our higher educational institutions.
We've seen some results from that, some positive results. UK has really stepped up, and of course they had at one time a doctorate of DEI. I don't know what they called it.
Yeah, I don't know the name of it, but yeah, they had a doctoral
no
program.
Exists,
That's right.
So that means we're not going to have future business leaders or future principals or superintendents or business or future citizens going through that being brainwashed by that dogmatic DEI.
So the progress that we made in our higher educational systems, why aren't we making the same progress in K through 12? That's the basic idea. We still have all kinds of required educational trainings that have DEI principles in it. There's a lot of activists that are currently employed as K through 12 educators that have no business in our classrooms, if we want to be honest. And certainly the topics that they are talking about, which venture very far from our curriculum standards, need to be eliminated.
And what makes that especially problematic, Dr. Pearson, is that we're not teaching kids how to read in our public education system. We're not teaching them, we're not preparing them adequately for the future. Certainly, at the very least, until we do that, that needs to be the priority of everyone involved in the educational system.
That's right. I 100%. So there was a bill filed, SB 93, I believe, last session by Stephen Meredith, who we mentioned earlier, with Chad Meredith. I think Lindsay Titchener also has some legislation that she filed in this vein. The bottom line is you shouldn't be required to go through these DEI trainings, and we need to eliminate some of these woke influences from our K through 12 education. This is a captive audience that a lot of activist teachers are using. What we need is our teachers to just be able to focus on teaching what's the curriculum.
And that's what we see in charter schools around the country. They're freeing teachers. Teachers, for the most part, really do want to teach. And their hands are tied, and the principals can't make decisions, and it's a bureaucratic, bungled mess is what it is. And part of that is just that influence, like you said, that environment of this DEI that creates this woke environment that messes up the priorities and gets our priorities all out of order.
That's right.
So we need to return to those.
I always say this: let the teachers teach, but make sure that they're teaching what they're supposed to be teaching.
Right. And also, by the way, the legislature wanted parents to be involved in the curriculum in making these decisions about what the curriculum. We need to make sure districts are doing that as well. So, yeah.
All right. I hear Calvin on. We're going to talk to Calvin in our last segment, but we're going to continue on and talk a little bit about some other legislation. How about on the topic of law, order, and self-defense? A bill that was filed last session by Senator Aaron Reed, would expand concealed carry, or what we actually have in Kentucky is called constitutional carry.
Right.
You don't need a license in order to conceal carry a firearm as long as you're not a felon, you know, you're not a drug user, etc. There's some basic restrictions there, but it's a constitutional right in the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. If you are an 18-year-old young woman who is scared as she's dealing with a society that often views her as prey rather than an important person worthy of self-defense, why don't we allow those people to, of course, we're going to encourage them to get training in firearms. I'll actually go as far as to say I wouldn't mind firearms training in schools.
Yeah. So this would change the age, right?
That's right.
This would lower the age.
So right now, everyone over the age of 21 or older has the constitutional right to conceal carry in the state of Kentucky without a license. But we have that little window, 18 to 21. What about those people?
Well, those people can fight and defend this country. They can do everything else. They should be able to do that. Also, you know, younger people tend to work like later shifts at night, and I know with young women, this has also been brought up that, you know, there's a lot of shift work that goes on. They might be maybe working at a hospital or a late night restaurant that closes late or whatever, and they're by themselves. They need that protection.
100%, 100%. And so, really, who this victimizes the fact that they can't conceal carry. Young women don't like to open carry. They don't like to have a big firearm hanging on their side for whatever reasons. All right. But concealed carry is a very, exactly.
But I'll tell you I think it's even more effective not to have it, to conceal it, because a potential bad guy doesn't know.
Exactly.
Hey, they may have a firearm.
And there's far less risk of that firearm being taken away if it's not open.
And misused.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Another law and order issue that has really drawn a lot of attention recently. We do have some provisions in our state law that essentially take the decision away from our parole board whether or not we should be allowing violent criminals back on the street. If those criminals follow certain protocols when they're in prison, they're well behaved. Our parole board can't actually take some of these people that really should not be on the street. They can't keep them there. The criminals can appeal to a judge, and as we know, and we'll talk about this in future shows, some of the judges in Jefferson County in particular have some very appalling records on preventing crime and allowing criminals back on the street. And so T.J. Roberts has actually proposed two different pieces of legislation that I think are fantastic. The first, and let me just say, this all got spurred by a case in Versailles, so in Woodford County, Kentucky, where a man broke into a person's house, stabbed a young girl, ultimately got into a violent confrontation with the father of this family, the Tipton family, threw him across the room. He said 10, 15 feet, and then wound up with a kitchen knife, butchering an 8-year-old boy, killing him. Ultimately, that person pled insanity. So they said they were not liable. They were not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. The jury found that to be the case, and he ultimately got sentenced to, I want to say his original sentence it was more than 12 years. I don't think it was more than 20 years. That man, with no input, the parole board was not able to stop this, according to our state law. That man was released from prison after killing an 8-year-old boy after 8 years, only 8 years in prison.
Yeah. And this, I know there are people who want to do criminal justice reforms.
Absolutely.
This does not help that case.
Yeah.
This does not help the cause.
That's right.
When you have these kinds of results and consequences, because
Absolutely.
the number one thing you can argue that local government is tasked with doing is keeping its people and citizens safe.
That's right.
If you're not safe, you don't have, in the other liberties we have really become meaningless. You know?
Absolutely.
And so I know there's important, what I hate about this too is there are important reforms that need to be done, but folks aren't in a mood to do that. You know,
That's right.
Our leadership is in a mood to crack down on this, and I get it. I understand why.
That's right.
You know?
I mean, when we're letting a person who murders an 8-year-old boy in cold blood out of prison for 8 years without really the parole board being able to stop it, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Another aspect of that case that needs to be addressed, and TJ Roberts has proposed this as well. In that case, Ronald Exantis was found not guilty of the murder because of insanity, but lesser parts of the charges, he was not found not guilty by that reason. So the general idea here is, if you're insane and therefore not fully guilty for your actions in one of the cases, all of the cases that are associated with that crime need to have the same designation. So it was like the lesser things, breaking and entering, those sorts of things. He was not regarded as not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect.
A couple of years ago, the legislature passed House Bill 5, a huge omnibus, 14-part
the Safer Kentucky Act.
Criminal Act. Really, it was designed to strengthen sentencing. And so I think we're going to hear some more about this. Like you said, I think also it's going to be interesting to see how that bill's actually working in terms of reducing criminal rates. We certainly hear about the dramatic cases. Hopefully we should all hope that crime is going down and that we become less, that there's less of an opportunity for that to happen to us. But I think there's much more work to be done on this to make it, we need to have that balance where we're giving people that aren't violent an opportunity to re-enter our society if possible, be productive citizens.
That's right.
On the other hand, we need to lock violent folks up and throw the key away.
That's right. Now, I want to remind everyone this is a budget year. So the legislature will be handling budget. We will not be getting a 0.5-point reduction in our income tax during this session because we did not meet the benchmarks.
But we will have a 0.5-point rate reduction this year because that was voted on previously. But in 27, we won't have that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, but that's the major responsibility of legislators, is that passing a balanced budget. That's
right.
a major job.
Some other tax cuts that I think we should consider, however, is eliminating sales tax on goods and services from nonprofits and religious organizations.
We should be able to get that done.
I don't know what the objection is. We're not talking about a massive amount of money here. And the ability to tax is the ability to destroy. I believe that's from Marbury versus Madison. So let's go ahead and eliminate that in the next session. We'll be back after the break with Calvin Leach.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, Contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. Remember, you can find us on Facebook under Kentucky's Voice or YouTube, where we live stream and also post clips. You can also find us on Channel 21 on Spectrum at 12:30, which we're coming up on. That's not too far away, and also 4 p.m. today. I also want to remind our listeners, this is a listener-supported ministry / radio program where we bring conservative talk and opinion to the Louisville area. And if you want to support that, you can text 502-571-0970. Just text the word give and a link will pop up so that you can go through that process. You can also find this on kyvoice.org if you've got your URL browser. Okay, I'm honored to have in this next segment a candidate for an election, and you're hearing this right. There will be an election for part of Louisville in the middle of December of this year. So David Yates, who was a longtime state senator for the southwest area of Louisville, of Jefferson County, he has been promoted. I guess you could say that. Appointed. I guess it's appointed. I would say it's probably a promotion. He probably thinks so.
Yeah.
He was appointed the new Jefferson County clerk, and so his position is vacant, and there will be an election on December 16th, as well as the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday before December 16th, where you can vote early. The Republican nominee for that position is a gentleman named Calvin Leach. So can we bring on Calvin?
Good
Hello.
to be with you, Lance.
Yep. It's great to have you on. Let me just pass it off to you. Just talk about your candidacy. What position is it that you're running for, and who would you be representing if they do choose to elect you?
Well, first off, let me say that we have a plague in Jefferson County. And that plague is Democrat leadership. The mayor's a Democrat, Metro Council's majority Democrat, most of the state reps and state senators are Democrat, and the needle just never seems to move in a positive direction. Criminal activity has a home here. Infrastructure needs to be revamped. People are struggling to pay their property tax. Homelessness is out of control. The drug epidemic has really exploded, courtesy of the previous administration's open door policy at the southern border. And really, what it boils down to is neglect. We're always dealing with the same issues, the same nonsense. And when you look up, it's the same political party running the show. But thankfully, we have some opportunities in front of us to make wholesale changes, and that starts here with me.
Okay. And so Calvin is running for state senate for District 37. That's South End, Louisville, Southwest specifically. Mostly it's the area between Watterson Parkway and the Gene Snyder extension, 841. And so it's the area west of Muhammad Ali Airport, west of that Crittenden Drive, that area, plus the Jacobs addition just north of the Watterson. So these are, if you're in one of these neighborhoods, you probably are going to be able to vote in this. It's Hazelwood, Kenwood, Parkwood, PRP, Prairie Village, Sylvania, Waverly Hills, and then parts of Hunter's Trace, Johnsontown, and Valley Gardens. So I know that was a mouthful, but if any of those neighborhoods sound like your neighborhood, there's a good chance that you're going to be able to go out and vote for Calvin December 16th. Okay, so Calvin, it's a big step running for office. You actually ran the last time against David Yates, who, if I'm being candid, is a pretty strong candidate. You did remarkably well, giving not a lot of resources. Just tell us a little bit about your background. What career are you in? What career have you had in the past? Are you from the area? What are your community ties? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm from the area. I've lived here my entire life. Just to clarify, the district encompasses pretty much the entire South End. It's everything as far north as Algonquin Parkway, all the way down to the Gene Snyder. And it actually stops at Strawberry Lane going east and on Old Cane Run Road going towards the west. But
Okay.
I don't have a background in politics apart from serving as a legislative aide briefly in Councilman Rick Blackwell's office. And I used to attend his coffee meetings to discuss issues in the neighborhood. So I kind of got to know him, and he offered me the job. And it was a good chance for me to learn the inner workings of the metro government, because I don't pay much attention to local politics. And I don't think a whole lot of people do either.
That's
They're
true.
more concerned with national politics. And, I can talk about things like foreign policy, the economy, illegal immigration, abortion. That's my that's my MO when it comes to the political sphere. But when we start talking about things like zoning, ordinances, speed bumps, trash pickup, I'm just not as well versed on those kinds of things. So it was a good opportunity for me to just learn how things work and kind of get a sense of the lower level community concerns. As you mentioned, I do have a political science degree, for whatever that's worth. I served in the military for 6 years. I just got out about 9 months ago, and I'm running for this office a second time. And I do believe that this is a good chance for us to get it. If we can actually win this thing, this is probably the best opportunity we're going to have to do it for a while. And I'm looking forward to this chance to flip the entire South End red.
That's right. And we'll get into some of those factors and why this is a great opportunity to pick up this seat. But just I want to reiterate, did you go to PRP for high school?
I did.
Okay, so you grew up here. You've lived here basically your whole life, aside from some travel with the Army. You're an Army veteran.
Mhm.
What are some community? Have you been involved in any other community organizations? And you
I
did
have,
serve. You did serve as an intern with the Metro Council member. So go ahead. Yeah.
I also served as an intern with the what's the name of that nonprofit? Kentucky Refugee Ministries. I
Okay,
worked in the employment office, so I would help immigrants that come here, find jobs, and just kind of get assimilated into American society. I think our immigrant population has grown substantially, and I think that they contribute positively to the local economy. A lot of them come here, they start businesses. Their businesses seem to do pretty well. I enjoy a lot of the ethnic restaurants here. And I know for a fact that I got a lot of votes from the immigrant population last year, especially a lot of Muslims in the area that are just not on board with this woke nonsense that seems so pervasive in our society. So I'm hoping that I can call on that support again the second time around. The only thing I'm concerned about is the likely low turnout and the lack of awareness, as we keep harping on, because there's just it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of hype this time around. But I appreciate all the work that's being done by everybody involved to create that awareness and try to mobilize the electorate as much as possible. And hopefully we can have a good turnout and do something special.
Yeah, I hope so too. And as you mentioned, so the state legislature is kind of a sweet spot for you. So the local politicians handle things like potholes, trash pickup, those sorts of things. Federally, not only do you need millions of dollars to run for a federal office, but they're dealing with national problems. And so the state legislature is actually a very nice sweet spot.
Well, Calvin, this is Jim Waters, and thanks for taking a few minutes today with us. How do you see what you can do in Frankfort as helping the district that you would represent? Do you have some ideas about maybe some specific problems there that that Frankfort can help with, that you would work on?
I've been brainstorming quite a bit. And, when I get out here in Canvas, it's not just about me trying to drum up support. It's also trying to get a sense of the community concerns. And I can tell you unequivocally that the concern that's at the top of everyone's mind right now is the criminal element. We have to find a way to curb it. In 2023, just to throw out some numbers, we had 136 homicides. Last year, we had 141. Shootings have been way up. Armed robberies have skyrocketed. So I haven't checked the numbers for this year, but I'm pretty sure there is a slight upward trajectory going on. I don't see anything getting better anytime soon with that. So yes, I do have some ideas on how to fix that, and we need to get a handle on it sooner rather than later, because I do believe that law and order is the foundation to having a thriving business sector. We can't bring in sustainable jobs and have thriving communities unless we get the crime down. We have to have safe communities, and I think that is the primary responsibility of government, to protect its citizens. If we're not doing that, we're not doing our job, point blank, period. And some ideas that I do have in mind, and I know this one's been tossed out before, I think it was Jared Bowman that actually mentioned it, was a temporary KSP outpost in some of the more dangerous areas of the district, just to kind of assist LMPD with getting the crime under control. I know there was a lot of pushback with that when he suggested it, or whoever it was, I can't recall exactly. But another idea that I have is flock cameras and positioning those strategically in high crime areas where we can help that can help the public identify criminal offenders when they perpetrate a crime. And I've also explored the possibility of utilizing the National Guard. We do have a National Guard outpost here. And they do assist with public events, especially big major events like the Derby. You see them every year there, working alongside the LMPD with things like crowd control, traffic facilitation, things like that. So I don't see any reason why that same thing wouldn't work in these communities, particularly in the northern part of the district where it's more dangerous.
That's right.
And another thing that I'm taking a hard look at is the reallocation of confiscated firearms by law enforcement, and that is the KSP and municipal departments as well. I think they should go to low-income, law-abiding citizens who can pass a background check, pass a drug test, but simply can't afford a firearm. I think that'd go a long way towards making our communities safer.
Okay, thank you. So definitely, crime is going to be a focus. The biggest pitch that I have for Calvin is a Republican. There are 32 Republicans and 5 Democrats in our state Senate. I believe I can only think of 2 pieces of legislation last session passed by a Democrat. Put Calvin in, and you're actually going to be able to bring back some things to the South End, because the South End needs some funds in order to develop. Find Calvin on Facebook at Calvin for KY Senate, and he will have information for you.